Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When I inherited 38 acres of wild Colorado hillside, I thought I'd found peace. No neighbors, no rules, just trees, silence, and a locked gate. Then the HOA came knocking, smiling, lying, scheming. They wanted my road, my land, my freedom. What they got was war. I inherited the land from Uncle Carl when I was 35. 38 acres of unforgiving Colorado hillside, choked with pine and rattlesnakes, no utilities, no access besides a half-buried gravel path, barely wide enough for a mule. When the papers came through and I saw the old man scrawl under last will and testament, I didn't know whether to feel honored or set up. Probably both. Took me almost 5 years to tame it. Cleared the road, stabilized the incline with railroad ties and a truckload of gravel, hauled in cabling by hand, one spool at a time, just to get basic power. I restored the cabin, more like a shack when I started, into a livable structure. Nothing fancy, just me, the trees, and a solid goddamn gate at the bottom of the road with a lockbox, camera, and steel posts sunk 4 feet into the rock. Nobody got in without me knowing, and that was the whole damn point. My property was historically separated from the surrounding development. Survey markers proved it. I had exclusive easement rights on the only access road. No shared HOA, no neighbors within a half mile unless you count deer. It was peace, and I guarded it like a dragon on a gold hoard. Then came the sprawl. Big money types started buying up the low ridge plots. In the span of 2 years, what used to be silence and sky turned into luxury cabins with Tesla chargers and glass decks. 12 new homes popped up along the lower slopes, close enough to hear their awful Bluetooth speaker parties on Saturdays. That's when the HOA showed up. They called themselves Pinecrest Echo. Sounded like a spa or an MLM cult. I ignored their welcome flyer and their second one too. My land wasn't included in their territory. County records proved it. I didn't have to talk to them, answer their emails, or pretend to care about their dog poop committee. But then came the day she showed up. Karen Meldowin. Blonde helmet of hair, fake pearls, blazer like she was going to a campaign rally. She pulled up on a Polaris side by side with 2 beefy guys in mirrored Oakleys. They stopped at my gate like it was a toll booth. "You must be Sam," she said, waving like we were friends. "Karen Meldowin. I'm acting president of the HOA down below. We'd love to talk to you about road integration and community accessibility." I stood in the shade beside the trail camera post, arms folded. "No thanks." She blinked like I'd spoken in tongues. "Oh. Well, I think there's been some confusion. We're working on a plan for future access that could benefit all of us. This road's mine," I cut in. "Private easement, not part of your HOA. County survey backs it up." She forced a smile. "That's precisely why we're reaching out. Integration is about inclusion. It's about bringing neighbors together." "Then build your own damn road," I said, and walked away. A week later, I got the letter. Printed on HOA stationery, complete with their dumb pine tree logo in watermark, it read like a corporate apology wrapped around a threat. According to their community vision plan, my gate represented an obstruction to unified access and would need to be dismantled or relocated within 30 days to avoid complicating infrastructure expansion. Signed, Karen Meldowin, acting. President, Pinecrest Echo HOA. I didn't even finish my coffee before calling my lawyer, Frank. By noon, we'd drafted a formal notice stating, in legalese and then in plain English, that I was not and had never been a member of their HOA. My property existed outside their jurisdiction, and my road and gate were protected under Colorado easement law. We sent copies to the HOA, the county land office, and the regional zoning committee. I also drove into town and had every last survey document and ownership title notarized and uploaded into 2 cloud backups. When you've spent 5 years building something with your hands, you don't let anyone take it without a damn fight. The funny thing about people like Karen, they don't like hearing no, and they sure as hell don't stop at the first letter. 3 days after sending the cease and desist letter, I got another envelope from the HOA. Same pine tree watermark. Same passive-aggressive tone disguised as neighborly concern. This one was thicker, stapled, full of lawyerly air. They thanked me for my feedback, then went on to say they were disappointed by my unwillingness to participate in regional unification. According to them, my gate now constituted a community barrier, and my refusal to cooperate would jeopardize future easement harmony. Easement harmony! I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my jerky. Then came the kicker, the HOA. Strongly recommended. I attend a mediation session at their clubhouse to avoid escalating the matter through county arbitration. Clubhouse. Mediation. These people thought they were the UN and I was Serbia. Frank, my lawyer, was less amused. They're laying the groundwork for claiming you're a nuisance obstructionist, he said. Which is a made-up term, but enough stacked paperwork, and some lazy county clerk might play along. So we played offense. Frank filed a notarized declaration of my parcel's independence, complete with plats, photos, surveyor stamps, and deed history going back to 1959. We attached affidavits from the land office confirming I was outside all HOA boundaries. I also posted a laminated notice on my gate. Private road, non-HOA. Trespassers will be recorded. Then, just to be petty, I installed a second motion light and adjusted the camera angle to catch any vehicle approaching from the South Ridge. That same week, I started seeing odd chatter online. One of the HOA's members, some 30-something with a drone hobby and more cash than sense, ran a community page where homeowners posted dog sightings and trash day reminders. That week, he posted a drone shot of my gate with the caption, "Is this road still in use? Looks pretty abandoned. Could be ideal for Pine Ridge Trail access in the future." The comments were worse. "Would love to jog through there." Such a waste of a road. I thought that land was going to be part of the Greenbelt. The HOA, apparently, was pushing some fantasy that my property was under review for integration into their plans for a scenic trail system. I called the county development office. They had no record of any such plan, permit, or application. Nothing on public record. Total fabrication. It got weirder. 2 days later, I received an envelope. Not from the HOA, but from some company called Western Community Consulting. Inside were mock-ups of a regional development overlay, with my land lightly shaded in green, labeled undergoing transition to semi-public access. It looked slick, like a brochure for a ski resort expansion. In tiny type at the bottom, map presented by HOA Pinecrest Echo in collaboration with private planning partners. I handed the whole thing to Frank. He raised an eyebrow and said, "They're running a paper war." It didn't stop there. I got 2 more letters that week. One was an invitation to participate in upcoming budget planning, with my name printed alongside people I'd never met. The other was an unsigned survey asking if I'd support converting my property into a mixed-use cooperative green space. They had officially lost their goddamn minds. But Frank's face turned serious. They're building a paper trail. These kinds of documents can end up in committee packets. If someone doesn't read carefully, they'll assume you're on board or inactive. That's how property lines get blurred. So, we did 2 things. First, we filed for a formal property status freeze through the county, a kind of legal flag that marks your parcel as contested so no paperwork can be quietly slipped through. Second, Frank drafted an official complaint of misrepresentation to the state HOA Oversight Board just to get it on the record. I also walked the full perimeter of my land, checking every marker, photographing every pin and tag, just in case someone got creative. I added 2 not-for-sale signs and zip-tied them to trees near the ridge. The last thing I needed was some idiot with a mountain bike showing up thinking I was running a park. The whole thing smelled like a slow-motion land grab. Friendly letters, blurry maps, fake invitations, death by bureaucracy. It wasn't subtle. It was just slow and dangerous in its patience. And Karen, she hadn't shown her face again. Not yet. I'd driven into town for supplies. Nothing special, just a re-up on propane, chainsaw oil, and some things from the hardware store. And when I came back up the mountain that afternoon, I saw the dust cloud before I saw the truck. It was parked sideways across the bend just below my gate. Big white utility vehicle with orange cones set out like it was a crime scene. An excavator sat idle next to it, treads smeared in mud, half-dug trench yawning across the gravel right in front of my gate like a goddamn open mouth. I slowed to a crawl. There were 3 guys in reflective vests standing around holding shovels and clipboards like they had every right to be there. I pulled up, rolled down my window. "What the hell is this?" One of them, the tallest, squinted at me. "You the property owner?" "Yeah. We're laying conduit, water infrastructure improvement, part of the HOA development plan." Shouldn't take more than a day or two. I looked past him at the torn-up earth directly in front of my gate keypad, maybe a foot from the steel post. That's my land. You're digging on my easement. He gestured with his clipboard like it was holy writ. We've got a diagram here says this stretch is under community utility revision. Yeah, and who told you that? Karen Meldowin. She said she's got authorization for improvements along the shared ridge path. I put the truck in park and stepped out. There is no shared path. This is a private easement registered in the county land office. You're trespassing. The guy held up a hand like he was calming a horse. Look, we're just doing the job. We were told. I don't give a damn what she told you, I said, stepping right up to the edge of the trench. You're going to pack up your gear, move that machine, and fill this in before I call the sheriff. He hesitated. That's when I took out my phone and started recording. Say again who sent you here? I asked, keeping the camera on his face. The guy stiffened. You're making this more complicated than it needs to be. I walked back to the truck, turned the wheel hard, and parked the whole damn thing right across the excavator's tracks. I killed the engine and got on the phone. The sheriff's office knew me. I wasn't some crank calling about trespassing squirrels. When I gave them the parcel number and said unauthorized trenching across private access, they sent someone up fast. Deputy Barnes arrived 20 minutes later, dust still hanging in the air. He stepped out, took one look at the trench, and said, "You've got to be kidding me." The workers handed him their work order, a one-page sheet with a logo that looked like it had been printed on a home printer. Barnes flipped through it, frowning. "This isn't official. This is an internal HOA schematic. There's no county authorization here." He turned to me. "You got your property docs on hand?" I opened the glove box, handed him the folder. He read the parcel map, the easement deed, the county seal. He nodded. "This road's yours. Sole access easement. Any utilities would need your approval." Then he walked over to the crew. "You boys need to wrap up and move along. You're trespassing. You keep digging. You're looking at charges." The tall guy started to protest. Barnes cut him off. "Don't care who told you what. You're working off a bogus plan. Pack up the gear." Karen arrived 5 minutes later, probably thinking she could clean up the mess. She pulled up in that same Polaris, stepped out in a tailored jacket and designer hiking boots, like this was some kind of boardwalk inspection. She gave me a thin-lipped smile, then turned to Barnes. "Deputy, I'm so sorry about the confusion. We're working on a regional improvement initiative, and our understanding was that this section was—" "It's not," Barnes said flatly. "It's private. You knew that." She gave a mock laugh. "There seems to be some miscommunication." "Not anymore," he said, and handed her the folder. "Read it. This is legally binding. This man owns the road. He's not part of your HOA. You dig here again without a permit, you're breaking the law." Karen's face twitched for half a second. Not much, but enough. She turned to me. "I hope you realize how counterproductive this is. You're blocking development that benefits everyone." I smiled. "Development isn't my problem. You trespassing is." She didn't say another word. Just got back in her little buggy and rolled off down the hill, the wheels spitting dust like smoke signals. The crew packed up and left. I stood there for a while, just watching the wind move through the pine trees, the camera blinking red as it recorded everything. Then I pulled the truck back around and started raking the trench shut myself. One thing was clear now. This wasn't going to stay civil. It was a Wednesday, mid-morning. I was down near the entrance fixing a section of fence that had taken a hit from a falling branch last storm. Nothing serious, just cracked a couple rails, but I don't like weak spots on my perimeter, so there I was, hammer in one hand, cordless drill in the other, when I heard tires crunching on gravel. I looked up and saw flashing lights. Sheriff's SUV. Not Barnes this time. 2 deputies I didn't recognize. One male, one female. The male stepped out first, hand resting near his belt, eyes scanning fast. The woman followed close, hand on her vest. Both of them looked keyed up, like they'd just rolled out on a domestic disturbance. The guy called out, "Sir, step away from the fence, please." I set the drill down slow. "What's this about?" We received a report of a man with a firearm threatening a community crew near a public access road. Now I was blinking. "You're kidding. Do you have a weapon on you?" I lifted my shirt slightly, showing my holstered Glock, open carry, fully legal in Colorado, and I had my concealed carry permit anyway. "I do. Registered. You want the license?" He nodded. I pulled my wallet and handed it over. The other deputy circled wide around me, her eyes bouncing between me and the tree line like she was waiting for a shootout. You got ID to go with this? Yeah, driver's license in the same wallet. Go ahead. They both moved with that careful, professional pace. Not hostile, but definitely expecting trouble. I kept my hands visible, calm. I wasn't about to be the guy who made the news for sneezing too fast near a pistol. After a couple minutes, they relaxed. The male deputy handed me back my paperwork. Mr. Rowland, everything checks out. Do you have surveillance on this property? 3 cameras at the gate. You want the footage? Yeah, we're gonna need it. This call came in from a woman named Karen Meldowin. Said you were brandishing a weapon and blocking access to HOA maintenance personnel. There is no one here but me and some busted fencing, I said. And Karen's maintenance crew already got themselves booted off this land once. Sheriff Barnes handled it personally. The deputy exhaled through his nose. Right. I'll log this as an unfounded 911 call, but between us, it's a dangerous stunt. You're lucky you were calm. I shrugged. I've been calm for years. She's the one who's losing it. Back at the gate, I pulled the SD card from the camera and showed them the last hour of footage. Just me, some boards, a hammer, and a squirrel that looked like it owed me money. They thanked me, took copies, and said they'd write up the report as unfounded call, false report, flagged for pattern. That phrase stuck with me. Flagged for pattern. I asked if they could do anything beyond that. They said unless it became habitual or resulted in harm, false reports were hard to prosecute, but they did suggest something else. You might want to get legal representation on standby and keep your cameras running. If it escalates further, it's going to matter who has evidence and who doesn't. It felt surreal. A week ago, I was patching holes in a water line. Now I was being treated like an armed lunatic on my own land. All because someone didn't like being told no. Before they left, the woman deputy said quietly, I read the Barnes report. You're in the clear, but I'd set up an auto-notify for your lawyer, just in case. That afternoon, I drove into town and had Frank set up a legal alert protocol. Any 911 incident flagged to my parcel would ping him directly. I also ordered a second backup camera system and an app that sent motion alerts directly to my phone with time-stamped uploads to the cloud. Karen wasn't just playing dirty. She was escalating. It started with a sound. Not loud, but sharp. Like metal on metal. I'd been drifting off on the couch in the cabin, wood stove crackling, dog asleep by the hearth. Then I heard it again. A faint clink, followed by a low whir. The kind of mechanical hum you don't usually hear unless something's moving where it shouldn't. I grabbed my flashlight and checked the time. Just past midnight. Pulled on my boots, clipped on the sidearm. Not paranoia, just habit at this point. The motion alert hit my phone before I even stepped out the door. Gate sensor, activity detected, 12:07 a.m. By the time I got down to the bottom of the road, they were already gone. But the signs were there. The panel casing on the gate was hanging slightly open, one of the bolts half loosened, the housing scratched near the edge. Somebody had tried to pop it open. Poorly. Amateurs. But it wasn't the kind of thing that happened by accident. I checked the surrounding dirt with my flashlight. Fresh boot prints. Deep 2 sets. One wider stride, one smaller. They'd come in from the tree line to the right, the direction of the HOA trail loop. I didn't touch anything. Just pulled the SD card and hiked back up, made coffee, and sat down at my desk to review the footage. What I saw made my blood go cold, then hot. 2 people, both wearing dark clothing. One male, mid-40s maybe, broad-shouldered, in a security-style windbreaker. The other was Karen Meldowin. I froze the frame and stared at it for a long time. She wasn't even disguised, just wearing a hoodie over a white blouse, hair pinned up. She had gloves on, but the guy, her muscle, wasn't even wearing a mask. He pried at the panel while she crouched next to him, holding a flashlight, clearly trying to access the wiring. They spent about 4 minutes at it before the motion light clicked on. That's when they both bolted. I saved the footage in 3 formats, uploaded it to 2 drives, and emailed a copy to Frank before sunrise. He called me at 6:30 sharp. Tell me this is AI generated and you're pranking me. It's real. He didn't even swear. Just exhaled, long and flat. That's attempted sabotage of a private security system, maybe attempted burglary, and it's conspiracy because she brought someone with her. What do? We file. This isn't civil anymore. It's criminal. By 10 that morning, we'd submitted an official complaint to the county sheriff's office, backed with the footage, location data, time-stamp logs, and a printed transcript of the video showing clear facial identification. We sent a parallel packet to the district attorney's office requesting charges for attempted unlawful entry, vandalism, and conspiracy to interfere with private infrastructure. The sheriff's office flagged it as priority review. That night, I added a third camera, hidden under the panel itself, angled up. If they came back for round 2, I'd have them from below. I didn't sleep much. It was no longer a slow creep. They were trying to breach my property with tools under cover of darkness, and with their goddamn president leading the charge. You don't do something that bold unless you think you're untouchable. But Karen had just stepped over a very clear line. And the thing about crossing lines out here is, once you do, you better be ready for the drop. The letter came certified. That was my first clue something was off. Official county envelope. Heavy paper, stamped. Looked legit until I opened it and read the first paragraph. Dear property stakeholder, please review the attached documentation regarding recent zoning adjustments affecting Parcel 18B, previously identified as part of the Pinecrest Echo community footprint. I read that 3 times. Parcel 18B was me. There were attachments, a fresh-looking map digitally rendered with bold green lines, and my parcel right there in the middle of it, shaded in pale blue and marked inactive use, pending reassignment. The HOA's territory surrounded it like a boa constrictor. It even had a dotted arrow from the gate, labeled Future Pedestrian Access Corridor. I flipped to the second page and felt my jaw clench. There was a signature from someone calling themselves Glenn Carter Survey Engineer, Pinecrest Echo Planning Division. The problem? There is no planning division. And I'd never heard of Glenn Carter. I called Frank. You sitting down? I asked. Number should I be? I just got a zoning notice claiming I'm part of the HOA territory and listed as pending reassignment. Also, apparently there's a fake engineer named Glenn Carter drawing fake maps now. I heard typing on the other end. Then silence. Christ, Frank muttered. They're going for paper legitimacy. If that gets into the zoning archives uncontested, they can use it to claim you were absorbed by default. It's dirty, but clever. They forged a boundary map, Frank. With a fake department, they invented a person. Yeah, he said slowly. That's a felony. By the end of the day, we'd filed a formal challenge of zoning representation with the county. That froze any active filings on my parcel and triggered a review by the Office of Land Use Integrity. Frank also filed a separate criminal complaint alleging forgery, misrepresentation of legal boundaries, and attempted fraudulent inclusion of private property into a public registry. We included the video from the gate break-in as context. The land office called me directly the next day. A guy named Roy, Midwestern accent dry as drywall, said, "Mr. Rowland, we've reviewed your previous filings. You're not in any HOA territory. Never were. I don't know how this got into our system. Someone submitted a false map." Roy sighed. "We're going to dig into it. That name on the paperwork, Glenn Carter, doesn't appear in any of our records or the State Engineering Board. So we're dealing with ghosts now. Or fraud." Later that week, Frank got a notice that the HOA, or more specifically Karen, had hired outside counsel to clarify administrative misunderstandings. Translation, they knew we caught them, and they were scrambling to spin it as a clerical error. We weren't buying it. We went ahead and filed a motion for preliminary injunction, asking the court to bar the HOA from making any claims, filings, or representations related to my property until the investigation was complete. At the same time, Frank subpoenaed internal HOA communications related to land use planning, seeking any mention of my name, parcel number, or the term inactive parcel. If we could prove intent, this wouldn't just be fraud, it would be conspiracy to seize private land through bureaucratic manipulation. The court accepted the case for review, not a win, yet, but it locked Karen out of doing anything new with my land until the hearing. She must have felt the walls tightening because a few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. "We should talk. You're being unreasonable. There's a way to make this work for both of us." K. I stared at it for a long time. Then I did the only rational thing. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Frank. I was done playing defense. By now, I had documents, footage, sworn statements, and a mounting legal case. But something Frank said stuck with me. These people operate in silence until they get what they want. Then they publish it as fact. So I broke the silence. It started with a flyer, one page, clean layout, title at the top, private property under attack, Pine Crest echoes attempted land seizure. Below that, screenshots of the forged zoning map, a still from the gate sabotage video with Karen's face frozen in mid-squat, and a direct quote from the sheriff's report, "This road is private." They knew that. I printed 20 copies and handed them to my mailman, who was more than happy to slip one into every HOA box on his route. I posted it on the community bulletin board outside the local general store. Then I emailed it to a reporter I knew in town, Sarah Kinley, small paper, big attitude. 2 days later, the story hit the front page of the Aspen Ridge Chronicle. Mountain Man versus HOA. Private landowner fights off community takeover. She didn't pull punches. Sarah had gone through the court filings, interviewed the sheriff's office, and even included a screenshot from the surveillance footage. Her story laid out the entire timeline, the fake documents, the trench stun, the sabotage, the false 911 call. The quote from Frank was gold. If this is how HOAs think they can expand with forged maps and midnight break-ins, then we're in bigger trouble than we thought. That's when things shifted. I started getting emails. First from curious neighbors, cautiously worded, a lot of "just wanted to ask" and "hope you don't mind" questions. Then came the angry ones, not at me, but at Karen. Turns out most of them had no idea where their HOA dues were actually going. Karen had been running her own little legal war, quietly funneling HOA funds into private legal consultations, PR mock-ups, and, allegedly, that little sabotage expedition under cover of darkness. One neighbor, Nick Hanley, came to visit in person. Former Marine, built like a tree trunk, looked like he could bench press a Polaris. I read the story, he said, standing at the gate like it was a border checkpoint. I didn't know. None of us did. I let him in. We talked for an hour. He'd moved here for the same reason I had. Peace, trees, no HOA nonsense. He only joined because the developer included it in the paperwork, and nobody questioned it. But this, fraud, conspiracy, maybe worse. He brought a copy of the HOA's last quarterly report. The budget included an ambiguous line item, infrastructure resolution, legal consultation, $17,000. No breakdown, no explanation. That's your gate fight, he said. She used our money to come after you. Nick wasn't the only one pissed off. Over the next few days, I heard from at least 6 more neighbors, some asking for advice, some straight up apologizing. One woman, Lisa, showed me emails from Karen where she'd referred to me as a hostile squatter on misclassified land. That phrase would become a punchline at the next HOA meeting. Sarah followed up her article with a second piece. Community cracks, HOA members question leadership after land dispute. Karen finally broke her silence with a PR statement. Classic non-apology stuff. Pine Crest Echo deeply regrets any confusion regarding land classification and remains committed to cooperative dialogue. Cooperative dialogue, my ass. Then, the twist. An anonymous HOA member leaked part of a private group email thread to Sarah. In it, Karen wrote the following. If we control the access road, the rest will fall into place. Roland is the only variable left. They printed it, verbatim, with her name. After that, it wasn't just neighbors contacting me. It was HOA board members. The vice president, a meek guy named Curtis who'd apparently been steamrolled by Karen for months, called Frank to ask for a meeting. By the end of the week, the board scheduled an emergency session. Karen hadn't been ousted yet, but for the first time, the walls were closing in on her, not me. And this time, I had the high ground. The courthouse in Aspen Ridge wasn't much. A 2-story government box with faded carpets and flickering fluorescent lights that made everyone look a little guilty. Still, when I walked in that morning with Frank at my side in a binder full of exhibits under my arm, I felt like I was carrying a damn warhead. Karen was already there, seated at the defense table, stone-faced in a gray suit, 2 sizes too tight. Her lawyer looked like he belonged on a real estate billboard. Too tan, too polished, and too confident for someone defending document forgery and midnight sabotage. The judge was an older guy named Meredith. No-nonsense reputation. Wore glasses halfway down his nose and had the patience of a man who'd spent his career listening to people lie badly. Case 09-1442, he began. Roland v. Pine Crest Echo Homeowners Association et al. Allegations include forgery of public documents, attempted interference with private easement, and unlawful surveillance intrusion. Mr. Rowland, you are representing yourself? I nodded. With counsel, Your Honor. Very well. Let's proceed. Frank took the lead. He didn't shout, didn't grandstand, just laid out the facts one after the other like dominoes. He started with the fake zoning map, presented Exhibit A, complete with the signature from our mystery man, Glenn Carter. Judge Meredith asked if Mr. Carter was present. He is not, Frank said, nor does he exist. We checked with the Colorado Board of Licensed Surveyors. No such person, no such license. Then came the nighttime sabotage footage, Exhibit B. The screen flickered to life, and there she was. Karen Meldowin crouched beside the gate control box in a hoodie, flashlight in one hand, the other reaching toward exposed wires. The courtroom stayed dead quiet as that played. Then Frank presented the HOA financial report, showing unapproved legal expenditures for infrastructure resolution. When questioned, the HOA treasurer, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, admitted under oath that he'd never seen any vote authorizing those payments. When it was the defense's turn, Karen's lawyer tried everything, called the video ambiguous, the documents misfiled, the expenditures standard administrative discretion, but none of it stuck. Especially not after Curtis, the HOA vice president, took the stand. Curtis, who had the energy of a wet sponge, nevertheless gave the killing blow. Yes, he said, Karen acted alone in filing those documents. No, we didn't vote on it. No, we weren't told about the legal expenses until after the fact. And yes, I saw the email where she called Mr. Rowland the only variable left. Karen didn't even look at him. She just sat there, grinding her teeth so hard I thought she'd crack a crown. After the testimony wrapped, Judge Meredith spoke in that low, deliberate tone judges use when they're about to end someone's career without raising their voice. What I've seen here is not just a misunderstanding. It's a pattern, a series of calculated actions intended to subvert property law and intimidate a private citizen. I am granting a preliminary injunction barring Pinecrest Echo from making any claim, verbal, written, or implied, about Mr. Rowland's land. Furthermore, I am referring the question of fraudulent zoning submissions to the district attorney's office for formal review. He turned to Karen. And as for you, Ms. Meldowin, I would strongly advise securing personal counsel. You may find yourself the subject of further proceedings. Bang of the gavel. She didn't even flinch. But when I walked past her outside the courthouse, I caught her expression. For the first time since this started, no arrogance. Just calculation, rewiring itself. Frank lit a cigarette in the parking lot and looked at me sideways. She's not done yet, he muttered, but her throne just lost a leg. He was right. Back in the neighborhood, word had spread like a wildfire. HOA members were livid. Someone had posted a scan of the court order on the neighborhood Facebook group, and the comments had turned into a full-blown mutiny. They weren't asking for Karen's resignation anymore. They were demanding it. And by the time the weekend rolled around, the board had called for an emergency vote to dissolve the leadership panel entirely. The Queen had overplayed her hand, and now the villagers had torches. They voted her out on a Sunday. HOA bylaws required a 75% majority to remove a board president. Karen got booted with 86. The emergency meeting was held in a repurposed wine tasting room at one of the more obnoxious cabins down the ridge. I didn't attend. Wasn't invited, didn't want to be, but the fallout echoed all the way up the mountain. Curtis sent me a text around noon. She's out. Entire board dissolved. Interim panel forming. We'll follow court order. Below that. You were right. We're sorry. I didn't reply. Instead, I got to work. First thing I did was order 4 concrete-filled steel bollards to anchor at the base of my gate, wide enough to stop a truck, deep enough to hold against anything short of a tank. Then I rewired the gate's panel box with a tamper-triggered kill switch. One tug on the wrong wire, and the entire system shuts down and alerts me and Frank simultaneously. I wasn't done. I added another trail cam, motion-triggered, hidden in a birdhouse-looking shell about 20 feet off the road, aimed toward the ridge side, just in case someone got clever. And I swapped out the cloud storage plan for triple redundancy, local drive, encrypted server, and direct nightly uploads to Frank's office. Call it overkill, but you only get ambushed once if you're paying attention. Meanwhile, the DA's office had gone public. They confirmed that a criminal investigation was now active into 3 counts, 1. Attempted unlawful entry and sabotage of private security infrastructure, DUSRA. Submission of forged zoning documents to a public office. 3rd. False emergency report leading to armed police response. Karen's name was included in the announcement. That was the moment the HOA crowd stopped whispering and started panicking. People who'd voted for her, who praised her vision for the community, were now trying to scrub their names from past board minutes. One guy deleted the drone page entirely. Another tried to claim Karen had misled all of us and that he never supported any coercive tactics. Sure, buddy. Keep telling yourself that. Nick, the ex-Marine, came by with 2 cold beers and a grin wide enough to split granite. She lawyered up. Full criminal defense firm out of Denver. Guess she finally figured out this isn't just a zoning dispute. We sat on my porch for a while, just watching the wind roll through the trees. She ever apologize? He asked. Nope. She sent a text asking if we could talk like adults. I forwarded it to Frank and blocked her number. He snorted. Good. A week later, a few of the former board members approached me about restructuring the HOA under more democratic principles and maybe building a bridge with legacy neighbors like yourself. I told them thanks, but no. My land wasn't a bridge. It was a wall, and I'd earned every goddamn stone. That weekend, I finished the last upgrade, a polished black granite marker I'd commissioned from a local stonecutter. Took 4 guys and a winch to set it in place just inside the tree line where the old HOA shortcut used to run. The inscription read, "Private property no access, no discussion. HOA trespassers will be prosecuted. Simple, effective, not up for interpretation." As for Karen, the last I heard, she'd quietly sold her property and left the community for health reasons. 3 board members resigned within a week. The HOA was under temporary management by a legal trustee while they figured out whether to restructure or dissolve. Didn't matter to me. The road was mine. And now, no one questioned it. The courtroom smelled like coffee and recycled air. It was 6 weeks after the injunction hearing. This time it wasn't about threats or sabotage or property lines. This was Judgment Day. Karen Meldowin sat at the defense table, looking like someone who'd just aged 10 years in one winter. No pearls, no blazer, just a muted gray suit and a face you'd expect to see in a tax audit, not a leadership position. Her attorney tried to bargain. They offered a settlement, something quiet, sealed, tidy. We didn't bite. Frank had made it clear from day one. This was never about money. This is about making sure she never does it again. So we went the distance. The judge reviewed the record. The video footage of the gate break-in, the false 911 call, the zoning forgery, internal HOA emails, testimonies from neighbors, experts, and county officials. It was all laid out, airtight, and undeniable. In the end, Judge Meredith didn't waste words. The court finds that Ms. Meldowin knowingly and willfully engaged in acts of fraud, falsified land use documentation with intent to mislead a public authority, coordinated unlawful entry onto private property, and made a knowingly false emergency report to law enforcement. These acts represent a gross abuse of administrative power and a direct threat to the sanctity of private ownership. He granted every point of our civil suit. HOA Pinecrest Echo was ordered to pay $75,000 in damages, legal, fees, property repair, and punitive compensation. Any documentation referring to my parcel as shared, under transition, or community access was declared legally null and void. The HOA itself was placed under supervision of an external auditor with a full forensic review of its financial and legal activity over the past 2 years. Karen Meldowin was personally barred for life from holding any position in a homeowners association in the state of Colorado. Then came the criminal part. The DA offered a plea deal. Karen took it. She pled guilty to 3 misdemeanor charges: filing false records, unlawful tampering with private infrastructure, and initiating a false emergency call. Sentence: 3 years probation, a $10,000 fine, and community service, including mandatory courses in real estate ethics. She got off lighter than she deserved, but she was finished. After the hearing, she walked past me in the hallway and didn't say a word. No apology, no glares, just that empty look people get when they realize they burned the last bridge they'll ever own. I didn't say anything either. I had a gate to reinforce. Back at the property, I finally let myself exhale. First time in months, maybe years. I walked the perimeter, checked the new bollards, tightened the casing on the gate panel. Everything in its place. Silent. Solid. The granite sign still stood, weathered now, but defiant. Private property not for negotiation. Trespassers will be prosecuted. People don't understand what land means until they bleed for it. Until they've watched someone in a suit try to carve it up on a map they didn't draw, using a name that isn't theirs. I understood. I'd earned this piece, and now I intended to keep it.